Okay. I'd like to start off by welcoming Kayla Raney, one of our artists here at Flawed Card Game. She's going to join us for a little interview. You know, we're going to kind of go through some of her stuff. Also, welcome to the handful of patrons who are in here so far. Obviously, we'll get some more. Everybody always kind of trickles in as we do these. But we're going to start off. I just kind of want to give you the floor for a couple minutes. I would love to hear, a little bit more, learn a little bit more, have our community learn a little bit more about like kind of how you even started in art in the first place. Like, where'd you come from?
Oh, man. Okay. I cheated.
Okay.
My mom's an artist, so
Okay.
I grew up in a household where their day jobs were as professional musicians, and
Okay.
my mom was an illustrator at night. So I knew how to draw before I knew how to walk. I mean, we were drawing on the kitchen floor on butcher paper that my mom would buy, and I was always pushed towards art school and art specialty centers and things like that. And most kids went to summer camp, and I went to art camp with
Nice.
old ladies and oil painting classes.
I mean, it seems to have worked, right? You obviously no complaints, I guess, right?
I had a choice when I was in my teens of I could either continue to pursue music, because at the same time our household was very much so you either do music or you do art or you do both. But we weren't a sports family. We weren't an extracurricular activities family. It was one of the two.
Yeah.
And they made you when you were in your teens choose, okay, are you doing music or are you doing art? And I was a terrible, terrible musician, so never any question.
I think that's a funny setup that they're like, no, you have the choice, but really you don't have the choice. The illusion of choice.
Early on, you don't quite have it.
Yeah.
Siblings have it.
That's funny.
You should stick to art.
That's such a it's just that modern day sort of illusion. There's all these options for you, but really we know where you're headed.
Yeah.
So how did that transition? I guess the kind of okay, so I pick art. I'm definitely going to continue being an illustrator and continue down this creator path. What flipped the switch, I guess, or what kind of led you to doing comic books and that kind of that style? Where'd you end up in that vein?
Yeah. So I actually had no intention of being an illustrator when I first started out. I went to school to be a painter. I specialized in figure painting specifically. So I'm from New York originally. I'm from
Same. Kathy and I are both we're from Buffalo, but little bit different. Yeah.
Buffalo's still New York?
Yeah, technically. People from New York laugh at us if we say New York, because we're yeah.
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 You don't understand. I was a music industry brat. We were everywhere. But
True.
I went to Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, and I studied figure painting there. But when I got out, I ended up in galleries doing curation and administration. So I was working at an administrative level in galleries for a couple of years after I got out of school, and I sort of stumbled into the tattoo industry.
Okay.
And that was where I was first exposed to comics. So my family, I grew up in a household where we didn't watch television, we didn't really watch movies, anything like that. We did a lot of reading, but I was never around a lot of pop culture.
Okay.
So when I found myself in the tattoo industry, the big secret is that all tattoo artists are huge fucking nerds.
Yes. No. We'll get it in post or something. No, we'll just have to. I do it every once in a while too. We really shouldn't, because we try to when we put it on YouTube, we try to rate it family friendly, but it's whatever. At the end of the day, if it happens, it happens. Yeah.
So big
Yeah.
secret, tattoo artists are super nerds.
Right.
And
Who'd have thought, right? A bunch of guys who sit around drawing dragons all day, right? Yeah. Yeah.
It's where I first ran into D&D. It's where I first ran into Star Wars. All of this kind of nerd culture culture that I'd never been exposed to as a kid, and I was hooked. I was like, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah.
I love all of this.
It almost sounds like a I don't want to say it in like an aggressive fashion, but like kind of like a second chance at a childhood. Like that's a big discovery where you're just like, oh, look at all this cool stuff, right?
And I mean, look, if you've ever spent any time in like an alternative industry, it is. It's a bunch of kids
Yeah.
that have like grown up to be adults that are like, no, we're still gonna be 90s
Yeah.
children because we didn't get to have
Yeah. Reagan took it from all of us.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that is like so. That's a big journey. Like you're like curating, art galleries and stuff, and then you're like, but wait a minute, what about this entire other side of the world, basically? Yeah.
People thought I was crazy. People thought I was absolutely nuts because I went from working in very highbrow.
Mm-hmm.
I was poised with collectors. I had pretty big name like museums and
Mm-hmm.
galleries approaching me to work with me. I was in charge of more people than I should have been in my 20s.
Nice.
I had no business having that kind of power over other artists. And when I told them that I was leaving to go into the tattoo industry, they were like, "Are you sure?
Yeah.
You really want to go? Like, it's kind of like it's looked down upon, but there's this really rich traditional history in tattooing and in the tattoo industry as a whole that's built on apprenticeships and
Right.
and it's very like kind of Jedi Padawan
Nice.
style.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that really appealed to me. It was something that I had never really encountered before.
Right.
And then of course like I just kind of found like my family that way too.
Yeah.
I never.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I was just gonna say I never like really fit in with sort of like the highbrow.
Right.
I'm not somebody. I didn't grow up in money. I grew up in like a very poor area of Brooklyn. My parents were musicians.
Right.
I didn't have access to the sort of upbringing that a lot of the people that I was working with had. I didn't really understand that world very well, so I always felt like an outsider. But
Right.
man,
Then you got to the other side of the coin, and you're just like, oh my people, look. That's awesome. Yeah, that's a cool, and like, I mean, it's kind of like you said too. That's a big like decision, a big step, right? Because I mean, even in like not that many years ago, like just tattooing and like that industry and everything, there was like a bit of a taboo with it, and like a bit of like.
oh yeah.
Like, where's your career going? Like, what are you going to do if you do tattoos for a couple of years, and then what? And yeah, it's a big jump. It's a big jump.
It was very weird. Like I remember like people saying, you went to this like very prestigious art school. What do you think you want to like do tattoos? You're gonna base your career on that. And when I started getting really heavily tattooed, like even my parents took a little while to come around to it.
Right.
These are
Right.
as like liberal. But
Yeah.
when I got like my neck tattooed, my mom cried.
Yeah.
She was like, "You'll never have." Raised me to be a painter.
Right. What did you think was going to happen? Exactly what did you think you were doing? Oh, that's so funny. Okay. Well, before we really jump into the flawed stuff, I just want to give you like one last chance for some of our viewers who might not know like what else you're working on. Like, what are you doing right now? Like, what's your schedule look like right now as far as like the projects you're working on or whatever?
Ooh.
Yeah.
So I started working in the comic industry right at the beginning of the pandemic.
Okay.
I had been working in digital art as an illustrator in traditional publishing for a little while, for like a year before everything sort of started to shut down. And I once again sort of accidentally stumbled into the comic industry. And so now the majority of what I do, I'm about 60% comics, and the rest is sort of a conglomeration of things that fall under like indie publishing umbrellas.
Okay.
So I work with a lot of novelists, like indie pub, self-published
Right.
novelists. I work with games.
Sure.
I do a lot of card design, specifically like tarot decks and things like
Okay.
that for smaller companies. I really specialize in working with small alternative businesses. So a lot of like clothing lines that are sort of branching out from like tattoo industry, like
Right.
arenas.
Right.
Have a little dash of like nerd culture in there, and I think that's the majority of what I'm doing right now. I still do a lot of traditional painting work, like murals and things like that.
Okay.
But in the last probably 2 years, that stuff has kind of been put to the side for me to
Yeah.
focus on like comics and games.
Right. I mean, it makes sense to kind of. It's exactly the like realization of what you want, right? Like how do I ultimately like kind of monetize this world that I found and turn it into a real job that I can do, so that my mom doesn't have to freak out about this neck tattoo, right? Like, yeah. Well done. Okay, so I hope. Let me ask you this: if I flip over here, can you see the second half of my screen pretty well?
I can't see the second half of your screen at all.
So there might be. I mean, everybody else is watching by watching my stream. There might be.
Oh, I see it.
You see it? Okay.
I do. I see
Okay.
it now.
You see it now? Perfect. I don't know how that happened. Did you click? You must have clicked.
I clicked a button and it did
Awesome.
things.
So here's one of the artworks that you worked on. This is Griffin the Fourth. Comically, the character Griffin the Fourth is being played by my brother in Discord right now. He made his name Griffin the Fourth because he's like so enamored by the Earth faction and like he likes all these characters so much. I just want to go down, ask a couple questions, give a little background, and like kind of get, let the viewers get an idea of how this came to be. The first thing off the rip, first thing I need to ask about is the pose, because we went back and forth on trying to get this guy sat down in the chair, and the way that I was envisioning it combined with the way you were envisioning it for days. Like we went back and forth. How does how tough is that? Like I guess my question, my like literal question is, this was early on. I didn't have a ton of artwork at this point in time, so I was giving you a lot of just like verbal sort of like textual stuff, and you had to turn it into a picture. And what's that like? What do you do?
That happens a lot. So that's really typical. And you happen to be exceptional at it. I have had to work with so much less.
Okay. That feels good. I'll take it.
So it's funny. There's nothing like glamorous behind figuring out how to pose characters and things like that. A lot of it comes down to one. I spent many years studying anatomy
Right.
and drawing models from life.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to have an understanding of the way that human bone structure and musculature works, but also the way that like weight is distributed through the body. As the body moves into different poses, that's different muscle groups being activated.
Mm-hmm.
So there's kind of a science
Sure.
that goes with accurate anatomical drawing. And when that fails, when you're in a pose like this that's a little more complicated just because of how you've got the object, like
Right.
producing props always complicates things. Seated poses tend to be a little more difficult than standing poses,
Right.
or in action poses. I absolutely just will take reference pictures. My
Yeah.
poor husband
Yep.
has so many pictures that he will never ever let me release.
Because that's what we ended up doing. I ended up taking a picture of Kathy, sending it to you, and then you immediately replied and sent me the picture of your husband that was like, or maybe it was, wait, let me think. Was it a picture of you? It was you, and he had taken it, yeah. Yeah, you had a shark rod, Kathy had a broom, and we're trying to get this figured out. And, I mean, the results are great. As far as the actual, like you said, the posture and the anatomy and everything on this guy, some of the things that I really wanted was I wanted him to look, kind of larger than life. I wanted him to be huge. He's pouring out of the chair. There's like, you can see the weight kind of, like he's really leaning in on that arm, like he's ponderously kind of looking at the sword. I mean, there's like a lot of, you gotta, like, knocked it out of the park as far as getting the stuff in there that I cared about. But then, like you said, where's the line drawn? Pun intended or something. As far as how much effort do you have to put into the anatomy and the sort of like make it make sense while also make it like the creative kind of image that the person wants,
I think because sequential artwork, especially like action sequences,
Mm-hmm.
I think authors can sometimes get a little carried away.
Okay.
I imagine this like very complicated sort of karate slash medieval sword swinging action pose, and it's like that doesn't exist, sir.
Right. There's no way that this person can carry that item and move in that direction. Yeah, I can imagine. Second question I would like to ask about this one in particular, and this might be the only one that we really would go this deep on, because this was one of the first. This was a big deal when we got Griffin done the first time around. But I had given you like some reference material and some, written description of the sword here. And you, for really the first time, brought kind of the entire thing to life. There hadn't been another art done of the whole like full length of the sword. How does, to put my word, I'm going to clean my words up a little bit. Because it was referencing a piece of art that somebody had already done, how easy is that to work in and really keep it captured and like keep that kind of feeling of, continuity? I mean, like you said, like sequential pages, right? You're trying to create the same images over and over again, but they also have to be different,
Right. So it's a weird line, especially like when you're working with a body of work like
Mm-hmm.
this, where you know that these images are going to be engaged with at the same time from
Right.
a difficult
Right.
artist.
Right.
So you have to find a way to create, like you said, continuity while still retaining my own personal art style.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm somebody who, one of the ways that I was trained was to look at something and be able to copy it directly,
Sure.
regardless of what style it was in.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this moment where you kind of have to hold yourself back to make sure that you're not replicating
Right.
the references style so much so that it takes away from your own art
Right.
styling process.
Because that needs to come through. You obviously, if I just wanted one person to do all these arts, I would hire one person, right?
Exactly.
And I obviously want that versatility and that difference in those little notes here and there of, when one of my players picks up one of these cards, they're going to say, oh, Kayla made that, or the next one, oh, Robert made it. And they get an idea of like what they look like, but at the same time, like you're saying, yeah, you do want to have continuity. So it's a really interesting sort of balance.
Yeah, it's a weird dance. I find myself doing usually two separate versions.
Okay.
So I'll typically do a sketch that is like, and most of the time, like my clients or whoever I'm working with don't actually see this part of the process. I'll do a sketch that is actually quite literally like directly copying
Okay.
what the reference is, just so I can kind of like get it out of my system.
Right.
And then I start to work it in my own style.
Now it's time to open up and go, yeah, that's cool.
Yes.
That's cool. Well, yeah. I don't know if anybody in the chat has any final comments on Griffin. I think we're going to click over and get to the next piece. But to take a moment, Griffin the Fourth in the chat says he's a king, which is literally true. One of the things I just want to comment on and just kind of, I guess, share back with you, because I don't know how much we usually talk after the job is done. A lot of times I'm just like, oh my God, thank you, it's perfect, and then we go on, we go on to the next one. But this one was huge. Like I don't know how many people in the chat even know this, but we actually had this art made twice. You and I kind of had this conversation. I had another artist back out when the product was done. I mean, it was ready to be shipped, and she just wasn't interested in finishing the deal. So like, you kind of jumped in. I remember it was like short notice and short time, and there's all this other hectic stuff going on. But then once we finally had him, and we put him on the card, and we were like, here he is, and it was just like this very... It was a big realization, a big moment for me, because this is one of our first like true characters, right? This is an epic unit. He's got a name. He's core to and central to the story. Like this was a really big deal. And when he came over, when you finally sent it over to him, just like, there he is. We got him. Like we finally made it. It was a big moment. So it was really cool to be able to do that with somebody. You had already worked on a couple of other things for us at this point, and just kind of fall back. And there's not a lot of purpose behind what I'm saying right now. This is more just to kind of give the history to any of the people in the chat here who want to be like the Flawed Card Game like historian one day. It was just a really cool time, and we're really happy that it all came together, I guess.
It was a cool moment.
Yeah.
I remember. I like very fondly remember that because I think I may have actually volunteered.
Yeah.
I know I've only done graphics, but
Right.
Other stuff.
Right, yeah, because this was the first like proper art that you did, like the first like full creation of like an actual image for a card. Because previously we'd worked on the back and the elemental accents and that type of stuff. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna click over to the next card we're gonna talk about. This one has another funny backstory, which I'm actually gonna lead with. I'm gonna lead with this one because again, I don't know how many viewers in here know about this. I didn't know that this art was commissioned. I didn't know that this art was created. One of our lovely patrons in the chat here, Rawl, the agent of Flawed, and my sneaky wife at the time, fiance, I guess, right? Went behind my back, found all my paperwork on my computer, set up a commission through you, paid with my bank account without me realizing it, and hired you to do this piece right here, The Knife Expert. And it was gifted to me as a wedding present. My wife and I just got married this year, so this was gifted to me from Rawl, and it was directly out of left field. I had no idea this had gone on. It was such a scam. I'm just standing there completely oblivious, and they just show it to me, and I'm like, oh my god. So how was that? How did you feel about working with, I guess, my associates?
Oh, it was fantastic. I was so excited. I was being on when your now wife reached out to me at first. I was like, oh, this is it. This is my moment.
Nice.
I'm ready for this.
That's awesome.
It's gonna be the highlight of my Flawed Game card art career.
It's gonna be out there. It's gonna be tough to top. We'll say that, right? Like that is. I was so unsuspecting. I was so completely oblivious and unaware, and they played it really well. Apparently, like at some point, like shortly prior to them giving it to me, I had like gone into my like bank ledger to try to like figure some stuff out. And Kathy comes over and she's like, oh, it's good, like don't worry about it. And she's like, no, it's fine, and like she's like distracting me away from it and everything, and like just they did everything they could to get it done. I know.
Getting to see it for the first
Yeah.
time. Yes.
So that video is out there somewhere. There's also a screen cap of my face, like right when I get it, which is apparently very funny. Somebody will inevitably post it in here, I'm sure. But a couple follow-up questions on the art. I mean, as fun as the story is, let's talk about the art. Everybody, like literally everybody, absolutely loves her coat.
Oh, I love it.
So where did you go to be like, you know what, we need like a sneaky, like stabby girl, but just with the most glamorous coat, like you can imagine, like, where'd that come from?
Okay, so I'm a really big like epic fantasy reader.
Okay.
I'm really into like Victoria Aveyard. I was reading the Serpent and Dove series actually when I was drawing this, and those authors always had really beautiful descriptions of the clothing, and I'm really interested in costuming. Like, I did a project with this woman a couple years ago who she was a historical costumer for Netflix, and I was doing a bunch of like illustrations for her to get ready for production.
Okay.
And I went down this rabbit hole. I became totally obsessed with historical costuming for like 6 months during this project, and I've just like never been able to fall out of love with it. And it's a recurring theme in a lot of the epic fantasy that I read.
Okay.
So you know how like Tolkien is really into like food descriptions.
Yes.
Like, I tend to read a lot of authors that are into clothing descriptions now.
Sanderson does this a bunch in some of his. He will tell you a page and a half, literally just about an outfit, like one guy's outfit, and it just goes and goes and goes. It's like, okay, I get it. Yeah, he's beautiful. All right, next. Like for me, it doesn't speak to me quite as strongly, but yeah, it's awesome. I would say that's kind of like, that's quite a skill to be equipped with, because now you can kind of pull that stuff out and put it in a piece of artwork. Like that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so K Boats, excuse me, in chat says costume designers rock like me. She's actually a seamstress and has done like costume design and stuff like that as well. Yeah. Second question, and this one I don't have as much of the backstory on because again I wasn't part of the creation process of this. I was left out entirely. I've been told that you modeled the character herself kind of after my wife a little bit. There are some clear giveaways that I can see. How does that work? Like, how do you like taking a real person and turning them into like a non-photorealistic sort of, caricature of themselves? Like, how's that process go?
So I really enjoy it. It's something that I've done a lot over my career. Especially when I first started out, I did a lot of personal commissions.
Okay.
So people would come to me to have me like recreate their wedding photos.
Ah, okay.
Draw them in like their favorite television show characters. Like I did this really cool engagement portrait for a couple in like the style of Bob's Burgers.
Nice.
And like
nice.
And everything.
What's it like drawing people with no chins? Is that?
Very, very.
Yeah. I'm sure.
Like, cartooning is really difficult.
Yeah. I don't want to insult these people, but also this is what's required of me. Yeah.
Part of that style.
Yeah.
And I think that's something too that, like, I love fantasy worlds so much because of the way that you can kind of insert yourself into them and to live through these characters' adventures. It's one of the things I love about like RPG games. Like,
right.
There's something just beyond magical about the way that a person responds to seeing themselves as an illustrated character in like, a world like alternative to ours. And so I get a lot of satisfaction out of drawing people in this style. And it was so kind of almost easier for me to do it with Kathy than it is normally because I'd already had a little bit of context to like the world that you were building, and I understood the sort of dynamics of it a little bit, and I'd gotten a little bit of a feel for her just like through like following your guys' channels and your Facebooks,
right,
and
right,
videos and things like that. So I had so much fun.
Yeah, and it came out. So, like, Kathy, to this day, whenever we're making, like, a new advertisement or a new banner for digital purpose or even in print purpose, like, we're looking at getting a new backdrop printed for our conventions, and she's just, like, she is front and center every time. She's like, Knife Expert's got to be on it. Like, if we don't have this art, we're wasting an opportunity. Like, she fights for it tooth and nail, and, I mean, it's kind of obvious why. Not only is it a fantastic piece of art, but like you said, it's that sort of, that escapism, that realization of, like, hey, that's the other me, Yeah, it's super cool. Yeah, so she says Knife Expert needs to be on all the Flawed merch in the chat right now, which we've used it a couple times already, and yeah, it's not going away. Like that has definitely been like kind of like one of the I'll tell you one of the side sort of circumstances here. We had done all the effort on like the Earth and Water faction first. We wanted to get like one of the like sample decks done first, so there was like at least one product that we could show people, and then we switched gears to the Darkness faction, and this was like one of the first arts we got from that. So like when this kind of hit the scene and like some of our fans and stuff seen it for the first time, they're like, oh crap, it's something new, it's something different, and it's awesome, and then like it was really well received. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that people want more of it and definitely want it on like all the merch, or as Kathy says, which is convenient because, as we're going to see in just a second, we're going to do that. We're going to give you guys more Knife Expert. I'm going to flip over. This is a fresh spoil. Nobody in this chat has seen this except for the two of us and Kathy. So 3 out of 10 or whatever is in here. So these are brand new art. I've got the art and the card mock-up, so I'm going to flip to the art first, and we can talk a little bit, and then I'm going to show these guys the card. So this is the art for Backstab. Never before seen. I'm waiting for anybody to say anything in chat. I'm just going to give them a second to consume. Kathy's typing already. Obvious. Okay, amazing. All caps. Makes sense. She's still going. Real D 3D. Yeah. That is one of the main things I want to talk about. She's popping out of the damn card. It's not. We don't even see the card yet, Kathy. You're spoiling it. Yeah. So yeah, this is the most recent piece you've done for Flawed Card Game. This is the card Backstab. This is riddled with like content. There's so much going on in here, and you squeezed it all in and you got it all in, and the scene is just like it speaks to me. The one of the things I didn't ask for that you did, the little knife in his hand that he like dropped, that is like he realized just a second too late what was happening to him, and you know what I mean. If he would have just been a little bit better, maybe he, you know. But anyway, we've got our star knife expert. This is Backstab, if you couldn't tell from the literally, yeah. Griffin's figuring it out. He's big. He's not smart. Yeah.
I see now.
I'm noticing. So right away, the first thing I want to. Oh, okay. He's got it muted. He unfortunately did. Okay, that's fine. He's watching, not listening. Okay, first thing, right off the top, number one thing. We already kind of touched on this, but this is the case where you were literally drawing the exact same character again. The code is fabulous still. Obviously, she is still herself. New perspective, new sort of action. You know, there's a lot more going on here. Walk us through that. Like, what is the process of repeating a character and making sure that it's like fresh and unique enough, but also, you know, reminiscent?
So I think I'm very lucky with the work that I've done in comics, because that's pretty essential to being an interior artist in comics. Is you have to be able to recreate the same character over and over again. Because in a standard sized comic book, I'm drawing a character at least a couple hundred times.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And
I guess you don't really think about it with how many pages and then how many like cells there are on a page. It's so many times. Yeah.
And from all different angles.
Yeah.
Every like kind of motion that you can think of. And I have a background in animation, so when I do animation work, it's the same thing.
Right.
Except even more. I mean, I draw a character thousands of times when I'm doing animation work.
Right.
So over, just by force of habit and that being a big part of my everyday drawing practice, it's not as difficult for me to recreate the character from pose to pose, but it is difficult to keep in mind continuity of like the character's personality traits, because body posturing and posing is going to be reflective of that character's personality traits. A character that's maybe like insecure or like slinking through the shadows is going to have like hunched shoulders and like maybe more of a downcast head, whereas like Backstabber, she's like confident, bad lead.
She did this. She's not apologizing for it. Yeah. And I'm going to flip back for just a second to kind of get at what you're talking about. Even in this art, she is owning the street right here. Like, she is front and center. Whatever activity she's involved in right now, as unscrupulous as it may be, like, she's completely taking that persona and carrying it through. And then you see the exact same thing here with the posture, where she's really just like, she's in this clearly dominant position. She got what she came for, So yeah, the second note on this one. This might be like digging a little too deep. But when we were working on this one, you and I again went back and forth for posture, positioning, the position between the two characters. Even like there was we probably considered, I don't know, like literally tens of like different options. You made a bunch of sketches, you sent me a bunch of references, I tried to send you some references, I'm much worse at it. We went back and forth, and landed on this, and it's a really cool, like, it's almost like, it's clearly not bird's eye, but it's like a portion of bird's eye. It's like, it is from above, but not directly above. And you get this sort of like foreshortening of her body a little bit, and like the whole posture really gives you, it gives you a good look at everything that's going on here, right? Because that was one of the things we had talked about, like, how do you tell a story when you're looking at the ground? How do you include another character that's meant to be dead? Like, if they're just laying on the ground dead, like, how do we make this all fit? And then the caveat to that, also squeeze it down and get it on a playing card, right? And actually make it make sense on the playing card, which I'm going to flip over just so we can kind of see the mock-up. What the heck? Kathy! She is literally miserable! This is the worst! You knew this was happening? And you just let me walk into it? Oh my god! That is so good! I love the colors. My god, I love the colors in this. Wow. Wow. Yeah, this is brilliant. Wow. This, look, don't take this the wrong way. This might be my favorite one yet. Honestly, this is...
I love this one.
This is really, really good. I am so appealed by the palette. Like, the colors on this, like, speak to me so well. Wow. Okay. Anybody else in here seeing this for the first time? Obviously, Kathy and Kayla just pulled another one on me, and I don't even know who's responsible for this one.
Kathy's responsible.
Just Kathy? Just Kathy's responsible for this one? She is the worst. Oh my goodness. I don't know how you find the time to do it all, by the way. You're always making secret pieces, and then I'm messaging you for the real piece.
I'm like, okay, I know I can work on this like late at night.
Yeah.
All my other studio work.
Oh, that is so cool. This is, you know what? We talked about it a lot tonight, but this has got massive Star Wars vibes. This character looks like she could be in a cantina somewhere, just like with, yeah, that's awesome. That's brilliant. Okay, in the chat, this is from Mom, Dad, and Mary. Apparently my in-law half of the family got together for a birthday gift. Very nice, very nice. Oh, and Tyler. Okay. Tyler's not quite on the in-law side yet, but you know we're holding out hope. we're holding out hope. That's awesome. Holy cow, that's awesome. That is such a... I literally, when I clicked on it, I'm like, oh man, she probably put this in by accident. That's what I thought happened. Oh man. Yeah, Jalen's in here. Nice. Yeah, very, very nice. Cool. Holy cow. So cool. I don't have any prepared material for this, as you well know. Great card, fantastic art. The just that color scheme on the background and the foreground are the same color, but they are not. Like there's something so cool going on there. That's really, really speaking to me.
I got to have a lot of fun with lighting.
Yeah.
I really wanted it to be like a nighttime scene, and
Mm-hmm.
it was really, really fun to play with.
It's so, yeah. And you could...
The costuming was...
We obviously talked about that, but I love that she's just got another gorgeous coat. Just completely... Yeah, this is apparently in the Darkness faction. We've decided that anybody who's got it like that displays it with a coat. That is the thing now. Yeah. Oh, I love it. That's so great. The giant buttons and all, yeah. This is. I'm a fan. I'm a big fan. I like the flower-like detail. Yeah, and you have a little bit of that on this one too. Like you can see on it's more on the lapel rather than the actual bulk of the coat, I guess you'd say. The actual, like, what is that, the skirt? What is that called? The cloak of the coat, I guess. The cloak of the coat. We're making things up.
I don't know. Where's the seamstress? The seamstress will know.
Yeah. She literally would. Where is she? Can somebody get K-Boats? Oh, she's typing. What's she going to say? The body of the... Is that a typo, or am I supposed to pronounce that? C-I-A-T? Coat. Okay, it was a typo. Fair enough. I thought so. So the body of the coat versus the lapel. Typo. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, brilliant. I am super stoked. Holy cow. We've been waiting for this for a while. These people need to stop doing this to me. It's my heart. Like, I don't know if I can... I don't know if I can take many more of these.
Great faces.
I do. This is all going to be recorded and documented and put somewhere also. Well, I guess let's look at Backstab, because we were supposed to. Oh, there's already a screen grab. Jeez. Well, here's the Backstab card for the sake of anybody who is still tuned in for that. Yeah, God, there's so much to talk about now. I'm so underprepared for all this. Stickerless typing. Yeah, so kind of to finalize the points on Backstab, and one of the things I wanted to mention with the perspective, we put a lot of work into getting this angle right. I say we, Jesus, you put a lot of work into getting this angle right. Yeah. Kathy mocked up the card here, and one of the things that we like to do, we really try to incorporate like as much as possible, is putting a little bit of the focus of the art kind of outside of the template of the card, and layering it in a way that you get a little bit of like pop to the art. We do it on most of them. I mean, it's a small like graphical decision. It's not like it takes a lot. You know that this is why we always ask for kind of the character separate, so we can do like easy layering. It makes it super easy on our end. I mean, we can do it otherwise, but it's just like I know you have the layer, so just like can you send it to me, please? This one takes the cake though because of the perspective. Her head, like, I mean, her body is viewed in such a way that she's meant to be looking like that she's coming at you more or less, and then her head and her hair coming up kind of out the top of the card. This is like it's almost actually like three-dimensional. When you look at it, you really get this like sort of depth that you would I don't think you would see as much without the card template. Even I think it even adds to the perspective even a little bit more.
I agree.
Yeah. So Kathy says, talk about the choice. Okay, yeah. So this is a little backstory. I may as well. I think you and I talked about a lot of this as far as the characters and the setting and everything that we put into this. We've got. I signed up for a 2D game. We've got the Knife Expert, who we know to be a dark character. She's representative of the dark faction. Then we've got this unsuspecting guy with a knife in his back, and we wanted to make sure that we knew where he was from, so we incorporated some wave sort of accents, the blue cape, like this is a water character. This is clearly meant to be a character from that faction. And the part that might not be so obvious is we tied it all together with the setting. The actual place where they are is kind of important. I think I gave you one piece of reference material for this, and you said, "Oh, got it, check." Like, crushed it. Like, absolutely made it look exactly like you pulled it out of my head and just put it on the card. But basically, what the story is meant to tell here is that you've got this darkness character and this water faction character are kind of paired together, running a mission, and they're in a territory that is meant to look like the Fire Faction's territory. This is a similar backdrop to what you would see on Eternal Flame Soldier, and people who follow Flawed lore up to this point know that the Fire Faction do hail from sort of like this mountainous, snowy, tundra-like terrain, and these guys were going in, they're doing whatever nefarious activities they were meant to do, but the Knife Expert, knowing that her allegiance is stronger to the Fire Faction than it is to the Water Faction, betrays him, stabs him in the back, obviously ruining this guy's plans to sabotage whatever it was he was meant to do. And you get all this kind of packed into, again, so much data into a playing card. And it just, I love it. It came out so brilliant. Last question about this one. The foot.
Oh my god.
Were you seeing it as I was seeing it, or was I just really being picky?
No, you absolutely were. And I'm getting to the point where I have just been looking at it for so long that I couldn't really see it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I would send it to you, and then you'd be like,
Eh.
"It's still a little weird." And
Yeah.
You're right.
So, go ahead.
No. It's such a perfect example of like, there's this thing in painting. They tell you if you have been staring at a canvas for so long that you no longer see what's on the canvas, you need to like walk away and let somebody else look at it for
Sure.
a while. And it absolutely was this. Like, I would stare at it, kind of like play with it for like 45 minutes at a time. Can't.
Yeah. Just let me send it to Ken, see what he says. Like, yeah, and it was it's not that it was ever like bad, right? It's not like it ever looked bad. It was just a little bit tweaked, or a little bit like the wrong size, or a little bit like pointing in the wrong direction, or a little bit her ankle looks like it might break. Like, just all these little, and it's just like it's not quite there. And it's not that it's a focal point, but it is like front and center. So like it's almost like as soon as you sent it, I'm like, the foot's not quite right yet. Yeah. Well, I'm super glad with where it ended up.
That angle,
Yes.
when you're looking at it from that angle, it's meant for your eye to follow the direction of the body and then bring your eye around the canvas. So when the foot is off, it disrupts your eye's like flow
Right.
through the rest of the canvas, so you get caught on
Yeah. That's what it is. It was a snack. It was like, that's exactly how I felt when I was looking at it. I'm like, oh, this art is fantastic. She's doing such a great job on this, that, and the other. And I'm like, but what's going on with this foot? What is this foot doing? Yeah, it was, and I don't mean to draw attention to like the struggles or whatever, but like, that was a cool example of like, just being able to go back and forth and like, really,
problem solved.
yeah, it was problem solving, and in a way, I personally could never fix it. If you like sent me the file and was like, "You want it better? You draw it," I'd be like, "Nope, can't do that." But when you showed it to me, I'm like, "Now hang on. I'm not the artist, but I can see and I can tell that we got to change something." Yeah, I like the word problem solving, because that was a. Again, I hate to incorporate myself, but it was a team effort. It really we got there.
I think that's such a good example too of like, that's my favorite dynamic to have with an author or a creator that I'm working with is this collaborative
Right.
dynamic versus just like you telling me like, no, I'm the expert, like this is how this needs to look, or what we're doing.
Right.
Like, well, I'm the one that studied
Right.
anatomy for 12 years. I know what I'm talking about. That's not productive. That's not
Sure.
like a good work environment. So like, I think it's just such a good example of like, one, you can be a really experienced artist and still struggle with something like
Sure,
this.
sure.
I mean, it's a difficult pose,
Yes.
even for me, and you're gonna find issues. So like, I try to encourage first time clients, first time collaborators to speak up if they see things that is kind of like turning them off or that they think is wonky, because I make mistakes. Just
Sure.
like
Sure.
they're gonna make mistakes.
And I'm going to steal that statement that you just made and use it to segue to our last couple of images I want to look over here. When we first crossed paths, the first thing I heard you do, like you said, was a little bit more graphic. It was some templating and some design. God, this feels like millennia ago. Yeah, it feels so long ago. And I vividly remember the like first time that we had exchanged a couple of like short messages or whatever, and we came to the conclusion that I should like write you an email, like give you like a full pitch for what my vision was. And I remember so vividly like sitting at my desk and just typing feverishly like paragraphs after paragraphs after paragraphs, and then just like every like fourth or fifth paragraph I would just like incorporate something like, "I'm sorry this is so long, it's pouring out of me." I honestly, because having never worked with you, and I think that you can at least appreciate that there probably are some artists and creators who don't necessarily want as much input, right? And would rather be the expert and hand off a product and walk away. But yeah, I just poured my heart and soul into that email, and then I sent it to you. And I literally like picked up my phone and like sent you a text like right behind the email, and was like, "I sent you the email. I'm sorry it's so long." Like just immediately sent it. But that was for the essences, and I've got a couple of them queued up here that we can just kind of look at. And these are cool. These have got a lot of stuff going on. Everybody who's played Flawed, I know it does. It really does. It does. And we've even slightly changed the template from this. I mean, we're still utilizing all the art, but we've moved it around a little bit to make it a little bit cleaner on the card. And yeah, it feels like an eternity ago. I completely agree. But this was the first thing that you did for Flawed. And this was, speaking of like Griffin being a big moment, this is like everybody in here who has played Flawed knows that the selling point of the game are these essences. And the fact that you can customize your card and like put this sort of like mostly clear thing on top of your card, and then this is the visual that kind of pops out and like gives you that little bit of extra flavor. And I'm just going to kind of thumb through these as we go. So when you made these and you sent them, and I was just like, oh, we have the hook, we have the thing, it's coming real. And at this point, I think I had like maybe like 2 arts done or something, like for actual cards. Like this was right at the beginning. It was crazy. Open-ended. What was it like creating something like this? And this is a little bit tattoo art. This is a little bit abstract. This is a little bit like, sort of graphic design, sort of there's a lot going on here. So what was your kind of process to get these, you know, on the page?
It was fun. It had been a while since I had gotten to design something more graphic like that, because I think when you reached out, I think I was like eyeballs deep in working on something that was really illustrative, like very hardcore, labor intensive, technically like taxing artwork.
Yeah.
For a series of like realistic fantasy book covers that I was
Gotcha.
doing. And they were really mentally exhausting. Like I love doing them. That's my happy place. But you came to me with this pitch. Oh, this is so fun.
Yeah.
I love the concept, and like, I don't know if you know, but like my husband and I are really into Magic the Gathering.
Sure. Yeah, we've talked about this a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And I immediately showed him the email and was like, look at this cool concept. Like,
Yeah.
I can't wait to like buy this. Like, this is gonna be so cool. Like, I'm gonna follow the Kickstarter, everything.
Yeah.
And so going through the process of designing it and getting to sort of go back to a more symbolic process, where
Sure.
I really had to think in terms of how can I minimalize these images and these elements that I would normally put so much more like
Right.
kind of detail and movement and have so much more of a canvas area to cover. And how do I put it into this format? So it was like a really great brain puzzle almost to like problem solve my way through. And I think we went through a couple versions of each of the drawings.
Yeah, it was taxing because again I was a like wide open hose of just a torrent of what I wanted, and like to be honest, I mean, thinking back on it, like what I wanted, you know, was even kind of untested and unfounded, and was we had never bothered to express it before visually. So I'm asking you to do something that like realistically had just not been done, because it's such a unique like thought in my head, and I'm like, here, do something with this, you know. But yeah, I thought that this will actually bounce off what you were just talking about, like the idea that you want to. And I think right here with the one we're looking at here with the earth action, the little viney, leafy sort of stuff, right? Like I can imagine if you wanted to create a scene for a painting or an illustration with like characters or whatever, and it was in nature, that you would just put nature stuff everywhere. Like it would be trees and a stupid squirrel in the corner, and just like it would just be the whole everywhere, right? Like the entire scene would be saturated with that color palette and those feelings and those movements and those shapes, and it would just be like so obvious. And now I'm saying, hey, I just want like a couple little leaves like up in this corner, and like some little viney guys, and just a sprinkling, please. And yeah, it's like a completely different sort of art, I guess, is the way to put it.
Yeah. But you're right, it is very like reminiscent of like tattoos and my time in the tattoo industry, because that was something that I was asked to do a lot, was to take these more complex ideas and turn them into symbolic images.
Right, that's true.
That are, you know, look good in like a more pattern way versus.
We've all. Go ahead.
Yeah, you know, like you have somebody that says, I want a small tattoo, but I want the whole forest. Like,
Right.
okay, honey, well,
What do you actually want?
right.
Yeah, and it's I love the way that you talked about like kind of like packing meaning into a small space, because like that's even when you think about tattoos, like how many times in your life have you like ran into a person and they're like, oh, I got this tattoo and it means X, right? Like that is the conversation like so often, where they have sort of a deeper meaning, like another layer, and they want you to visualize that and kind of represent it. And yeah, that's kind of, I mean, it's not exactly what happened here, but like I had this really big idea and you made it really small and like it made it work, you know? Yeah. There's one more. This is like, I love this one personally. I thought this one came out so nice. There's so much little stuff going on here, and it's, we've actually got this one printed. I have a copy of it somewhere. I just love the way it looks. I'll tell you this, within the concept of like the game, this was originally meant to represent characters that like didn't have an affinity. Like they didn't tend towards one of the 6 factions, right? They were just kind of more mechanical, so to speak, more like outside of the realm of those 6 factions. But there's not much of that in the game. Like the big focus of the game is that everybody is something, right? So because there was so little of this, we started like looking for places to use it more. And we actually incorporated this art into a couple of other game pieces that we weren't originally planning on using it for, because I'm just like, this is so beautiful, we have to get it like involved more and more and more. So that was a design, like a game design choice that was driven by graphic design, which like almost never happens that way. Yeah. Final slide. I'm going to flip over and we'll just do a quick chat about the back of the card. This one, I have one gigantic question. The texture, that the velvety, like two-tone but not quite two-tone. Like how did you make that? What in your head said, let's do this?
I remember where I was when I was working on this, because it's a local business that I work for that's like a coffee shop.
Okay.
And the day that I was working on this is the day that they hired me to be their in-house designer, because I was working on this.
Oh, wow. That's
a cool moment.
Yeah. That's very powerful.
But I remember thinking about how I wanted it to be more than just a flat black or dark background. I wanted there to be this sense that if you were to touch it, it would have that texture, like it was metallic or like it was leather. I wanted it to have that aesthetic, and it's something that I learned how to do in oil painting.
Okay.
Where you sort of layer value on top of each other, and it's really just about experimenting, sort of like pushing the strokes one way and then pushing them another way.
Yeah.
Until you get something that magically, when you look at
it came out like that textured sort of look. We've replicated all over the place. Like we've used it in some of our advertisements, and like we have these big like they're basically like giant mouse pads that we play the game on at our conventions, and it's got that we've snatched that same layer and like tiled it across or whatever, and like it's very it's becoming sort of a piece of the flavor of the game, right? It's on the back of the card, but that little palette, that little kind of textured, colored feel is repeating itself, and we really went all in on it. I thought it was it's a really unique sort of like take, right? Like you said, like, I don't want it to just look like a gray or a black or a matte, no texture. Like that would look so much worse. I agree. But in my head, I was never picturing this. I wasn't imagining that this is what would come out,
Yeah. Well, too, like I think because I approached the game as sort of like, this is a magical world. This is a fantasy world, and there's this kind of decadence to
Sure.
fantasy.
Fancy coats. Yep.
Yes. Coats, like taverns.
Yeah.
Castles, like all of these environments, when they're written, have such incredible visual texture.
Sure.
So to replicate that
Yeah.
in the game seems really important to me. To like continue with the world
Right.
building in every like minute.
Yeah, that's such a subtle thought, but like it's packed with value. Like that's a really like strong thought, I guess. That's like to take the idea that like, okay, we're in a fantasy setting, we've got these fantastical things happening, and these characters are interacting, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We have to make sure that like even the graphics are on that level and make sense in that space. And yeah, as a final note, obviously we captured the idea of those 6 elements and kind of ringed the card with them. What did you send? 20 like proofs of different line thicknesses, different like spacing. This one slides over here. These are in this order. Like I remember we did a stream like basically similar to this, where I had I had the file, like the folder open of like all 20 of them, and then I had like my favorite like 6 picked out, and I said, okay guys, here are like all of them. I don't know that we need to see all of them. Then I like pulled up the 6, and I'm like, everybody vote. Like, what do you guys think? And like, I think I had even told you, I'm like, I'm gonna ask the stream and like get back to you, and this is what we landed on. And I think that it even almost kind of echoes what you're saying a little bit, where you've got this like decadence and this sort of like fanciness. That thin gold and like the way that it all comes together with that texture, it speaks to me. It very much gives me the vibe of what's going on in the game. Definitely evokes a mood feeling, they're saying in the chat. Yeah, Kathy even said, I would say the back and the gold outline is our branding. And that's, we actually chop this gold border up. We'll like take a corner of it and like slap it on the bottom of a flyer or like whatever. Or like continuously repeating it and like get people used to seeing it and, you know, get that feeling across. So yeah, it's been 150 slides, I feel like, but this is everything that I kind of had prepared to talk about. We ran for 65 minutes, which is pretty good. Well, no, not quite. Yeah, it felt like 20. It felt like we just got here because it was so like fun and interactive, and a pleasure talking to you. A pleasure having you on, and like this is actually our second time speaking with an artist, and the first time we did it like a much shorter form, and I'm actually like super happy that we got the time to like sit down and do it this way. This was a deep dive. I really enjoyed, you know, kind of getting the background and some of the stories, and I hope, you know, the viewers did as well. Final thoughts, you know, from the community. If they've got any like final questions, they can toss them in the chat right now. I always like to close videos by at least giving like a big shout out and a big thank you to the Patreon community that we've built. Like the people who have supported this game for the last however many months and or years, and like they're the ones paying you most of the time. The money comes from these people, so it is this entire project like literally could not have happened without them, and you're a big part of that process, obviously, you know, getting involved and working on so much of this for us. Kathy says, thank you, Kayla, for all your talents. Can't wait to see what you make next for us. I just hope I get to be a part of it. I hope that I don't get left out again. Okay, I am going to go ahead and shut the recording down there. I'd like to thank, again, everybody who joined us tonight in the Discord and just kind of was a part of the whole process. Thank the Patreon again, and thank you, Kayla, so much for coming and being on. Yeah, all right.